Welcome to the Darkstream again. Let's see if this is working better. Can anyone hear me, and is the audio better this time? Let me know if the audio is any better this time. I have no idea whether this is working or not. Are we streaming? I can't see anything. Okay. It is working now. So, unfortunately, I don't have the camera quite in the right spot, but I will just make sure to sit up straight. Yeah, so anyhow, I tried switching over to Streamlabs or to XSplit, and the video worked much better, but I did figure out what the issue was here, but XSplit has it doesn't even show you where to turn the stream off and so forth. So anyhow, we'll keep working on it. We'll keep working on it. Anyhow, today I am here to put the nail. Oh yeah, of course, because I just turned the audio down because it was too loud on the other system, and so now we're putting it back up. That should be a little better. Anyhow, I'm totally with Mike. I've been a tech head for 30 years, but I'm becoming more of a Luddite every day. It is amazing how bad these software packages are. It is astonishing how bad it is. I'm gonna turn this off too. So anyhow, and now of course I don't have the image that I prepared. I'll have to find that and load that. But what I want to do is explain how the final nail in the coffin of evolution can be hammered in. Now, I'm not saying that I can do that right now. I am telling you how it can, the way that I suspect them to be, will be done. Now, somebody in the pre-chat said that, oh, I'm here to try to salvage my reputation or something. It's ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous, because the fact is that the stuff I'm talking about has nothing whatsoever to do with anything that JF said. Nothing whatsoever to do with what he was talking about. And and Benjamin understood that. A lot of, see, that PC says, JF did a good job defending against Vox's debunk. No, he didn't. You guys, some of you guys are so stupid that you don't realize that what he said had literally nothing to do with what I was talking about. JF's not very smart. It took him, you have to understand that, first of all he really cares about is how he looks to his fans. So after it took myself and others 3 times to explain a simple mathematical relationship to him, then he tried to lie about it repeatedly. He tried to claim, oh, well, I understood it right away, but I was just talking about the selection bias. No, he wasn't. He didn't understand the issue at all. If you were there, you would know he didn't understand it. He wasn't talking about the selection bias. And we know he wasn't talking about the selection bias because the selection bias operated in the other way. It actually made my point more strongly, for the obvious reason that Ashkenazis in Israel are more pure Ashkenazi than the intermarried, not very Ashkenazi Jews in the United States. Okay? Now, let's talk about what we were, again, all the stuff with regards to concurrence and successional isn't even necessary to the argument that I was making. It was a part of it, but it was just a way that I was walking through it. All right? And Owen did a wonderful job of explaining how the whole concept of mutation rates that JF was trying to talk about had nothing to do with it. And I'm going to show you a graphic, because I thought about how Owen did such a wonderful job of explaining it to everyone. And so I thought, okay, that really worked well. So how can I do the same thing? How can I make it clear to these people who are so stupid that they actually thought that his response was a relevant one, and not just a relevant one, a good one? But you have to understand that it's not enough to be talking about things that make sense in their own context. They have to be things that actually address the issue at hand. And waving your hands and appealing to millions and billions is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. And I'm going to show you here in a second. I have to load up the picture. I have to load that up because I had it on the XSplit thing. But this should make the whole issue very, very clear to you. If it doesn't make it clear to you, then, you should probably consider dating JF, because he's about your speed, or more to the point, you're about his. Okay, so it's in this directory, and we're going to pop this up here. Now I'm going to hide it in a second. We'll pop that up in a minute, because first I'm gonna lead you to the understanding of what it is we're talking about. Okay, so we don't need this, but we do need this. Okay, so let's walk you all through the basic facts. Okay, does everybody, I'm going to ask you guys to confirm what I'm talking about here, just so we can see if you follow what I'm saying. Does everyone understand what it means when I say that the current estimate of the time since the chimp-human last common ancestor is 9 million years? Does everyone get this? The estimates range from 4 million years to 25 million years, but the current average estimate is 9 million years since the last individual, the last step in the evolutionary chain, before chimps and humans diverged. Okay, so we get this. Okay, very good. Now, the next thing is, does everyone understand that both humans and chimps are considered to have generations that last 20 years? All right, both humans and chimps have that. 20 years per generation. All right? Got it. Excellent. Okay. So, now, if we do the math, if we divide 9 million years by 20, that gives us 450,000 generations. All right? Okay, we're going to ban Neutrinoid because anyone who doesn't understand it is just getting banned. He said, no, you use a vague definition of human change. I'm not using any definition of human change. We haven't brought that up at all. You are dishonest and you're gone. Okay? So 20 years is what they use in the when the mammal chart. There's a big chart of all the mammals, and 20 years is what they use for both humans and for that. Justin has it right. No, it's not. He has 400. Justin does not have it right. Feeling Lucky Duck has it right. 450 generations. Okay? Now, there are an estimated 40 million mutations that separate chimpanzees and get that. Okay? This is all from the just the current Wikipedia stuff. Okay? So there's 40 million mutations. If we divide them, Dave says it's the same for chimps and humans. It's 40 million that separate humans from chimps. Okay? So just to keep it simple, we're going to say 20 million for humans and 20 million for chimps. Okay? So that means that there have been an estimated 20 million human mutations since the chimp-human last common ancestor. Everyone got that? Okay. So no, that's not 10K. It's not combined. It's the difference. The delta is 40 million. So, but because remember, they diverged. So we have 20 million here, 20 million here. The total is 40 million. All right, got it? Good, excellent. Okay, so if we do the math, if we divide the 20 million human mutations by the 450,000 generations, we have 44, exactly. Spec 7re82 gets it. That's 44 mutations per generation. The oldest human DNA that has been sequenced is 430,000 years old. That is the oldest human DNA that has been sequenced. Now I'm going to show you what I was talking about. Now you're ready to look at what we were talking about before. Do you see the blue number there? 3,088,286,401. That is the total number of base pairs in the human genome. Okay? So that's the total number that exists. The observed range, the observed number of variations of combinations is 324 million. And that 324 million covers everything from the blondes to the Africans to the Asians, etc., etc. So there's a very broad range of variations. And this is what JF was talking about when he was saying that there are millions and millions of mutations. That's what he was talking about. Okay? But look at the gradient line. Okay? The gradient line from the blue to the yellow. Those are all of the variated genes, the total range of mutations that are within the context of being human today. Remember the number we calculated, the 955,566. That is the number of mutations that we would expect to find in that 430,000-year-old DNA that is not part of the human spectrum. Just like the chimpanzee has 40 million 40 million base pairs that are not part of this gradient. Are you following this? The point that I'm making is that we know when you look at chimpanzee DNA that there's going to be, because we've sequenced the chimpanzee genome, because we've sequenced the human genome, we know that there are 40 million base pairs, or essentially, that are not part of the gradient. And because of the evolutionary timetable, that means there have to be 955,566 genes on average in that 430,000-year-old early human DNA. It can't overlap if evolution actually took place. All right? And so what that means is that evolution can be falsified. It can be definitively falsified. Now, I'm not saying that it has been falsified because I haven't seen that 430,000-year-old DNA has not been fully sequenced. We haven't fully sequenced the genome. Not only that, but when the genome sequencing gets cheaper, then we need to be able to find, on average, 44 new fixed mutations per generation. Malcolm, it's not a fixed rate, it's an average rate. Okay? It's an average rate. But it has to be linear, or it's not taking place throughout enough of the population. Chris says, what about the idea that some sort of radiation event occurred drastically increasing the mutation rate? Well, that's going to be their defense. But the point is that it has to be fast enough. If it's fast enough to fit this time scale, then it's going to be fast enough to be detectable. Placebo says, how significant would these mutations be? They don't have to be significant at all. They could be very, very insignificant. Except for the fact that if they are being naturally selected for, they have to give a fitness advantage. And so once you start looking at evolution in this particular way, in this economics perspective, you can see why it instinctively strikes the economist as being massively improbable. Joseph Sokolowski says they'll probably claim that our timescales are massively off. That doesn't help them. That doesn't help them because because we're just dealing with the last common ancestor with chimps. They've got branches and branches and branches that they have to account for. Because remember, we've got the time limit, that time limit. Victoria James said, why could there not be overlap again? Overlap doesn't help you. Overlap doesn't have anything to do with this. The Dashing Rose says evolution was based on racist assumptions. The origin of the species for the preservation of the favored races was the title of Darwin's book. That's true. How is Vox an economist? That's my academic background, and I've also written 2 best-selling books on the subject. Sammy Haas says 44 mutations per generation. How would that let's see. Okay. And the thing is that if you look at the number of species that are rapidly going extinct, here's the other problem that they have with regards to the idea that nice. This is where you see the morons show up. Honestly, I believe Vox is just jealous of JF. Why would I be jealous of him? I just literally walked you step by step through a mathematical proof that, number one, you can falsify evolution conclusively and scientifically, and number two, the probabilities are very much in the favor of it being falsified. Anaf Habib says, fantastic deduction, Vox. The evolutionist can no longer hide behind the buffer of it's the best explanation we've got. Kill that abductive crutch, demand rigorous falsification criteria as you did tonight, and they are done. Well, that's why I called it the nail in the coffin of human evolution. We now have a mathematically dictated falsification criteria, which is exactly what the evolutionists and neo-Darwinians have been avoiding assiduously for all these years. That's why JF was so intent on trying to redirect the discussion away to the meaningless angle of mutation rates, because it doesn't matter that there are those 300 million variants. That doesn't matter at all. What matters is the genes that are no longer part of the human pool, and how many of them there are, how fast that transition happens, and the fact that it has to happen fast enough that we have the ability to measure it, not just in 400,000 years. We could easily measure it. We could dig up people from, an Egyptian mummy, sequence the entire genome, and demonstrate that there hasn't been enough change in those 6,000 years to maintain the evolutionary hypothesis. And so, you guys want to talk about science? That is science. I just gave you a falsifiable hypothesis and a reasonable way to test that hypothesis. Go and sequence a genome. Go and sequence the genome from someone who lived 200 years ago. There should be at least 440 genes that are now part of the human spectrum that they're not part of the human spectrum. That it has to go back. That's the whole point that JF and the other evolutionists and the biologists don't understand. There is not only a mutational gain, there has to be a mutational loss, or there is no change, there is no evolution. What we're focusing on is the genetic delta. Placebo just got it. Oh, okay, so it has to be significant changes happening at an accelerated rate. It has to be happening at an average rate. Sometimes faster, sometimes slower. Slam Right Jam Done says, people's inability to grasp this is why Fantasy General 2 will never come. Oh, we'll get there eventually. PC says, what is the proposed alternative to natural selection and sexual selection? What is a better theory? Were Homo sapiens around for hundreds of millions of years, or did they change over time? Well, see, that's what's exciting. What does this tell us? This doesn't tell us that God exists. This tells us that if our time frames are right, there has to have been some sort of intelligent intervention in the process. We don't know who. We don't know what. But something had to happen. There has to have been some level of genetic engineering taking place for these deltas to be explained. There is not the natural processes that have been proposed are not fast enough. Because if they were fast enough, we would be able to measure it now. We would be able to measure it from the time of Julius Caesar to now. And that's why I've always said that genetic science was going to destroy evolution, because I suspected something like this. I never bothered looking into it because, frankly, I don't really care. This isn't my area. But when people say things that are observably untrue, I do tend to notice. The Dashing Road said, will you do a video about Lamarckism? It's another theory that is like evolution without people evolving from apes. I don't know enough about Lamarckism to do it, so no. John Kim says, I can't believe how ignorant biologists are. I know. It's not just that they don't get mathematical training. They don't even understand the logical basis for the facts that have to be connected by mathematics. They don't even understand the point of the path. Give me a couple minutes, going to go sequence a whole genome from a 1,000-year-old mummy. Look, I know that it's not possible. They can't decode the entire genome from that 430,000-year-old fossil because a lot of the DNA was broken down. They managed to just decode part of it. But the point is that this hypothesis allows for concrete falsification, and there is a test that will work for it. Now, I don't know. Maybe it will turn out, maybe they will sequence the stuff and it'll turn out to be correct. But it doesn't look that way. It doesn't look that way because we would be seeing more signs of it. No, I'm not assuming a steady rate in this exercise. Look, this is not difficult. If things happen over time, there has to be an average rate. Anytime you have a period of time and two or more events, an average rate exists. And no amount of proposing punctuated equilibrium, proposing, and I'll explain in a second why there's a population bottleneck and then a whole bunch of mutations fixated at once. I'll explain why that's not credible in a moment. Are you going to write a book about these findings? No, I don't think so. I'm not interested enough. I've got plenty of other books to do. Owen is not low IQ. Don't be ridiculous. JF is the perfect example of someone who uses their intellect to attempt to puff themselves up rather than know themselves and the truth. Perhaps. Let's see. Do you think that we could see similar events over different species? Perhaps. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't think that much about this kind of stuff. I've been working on several much more important things today. This is something that I threw together in about 15 minutes because it's not that complicated. time understanding it. Anaf says, you don't need a steady rate, you just need a lot of data points. Sequence 100 plus human genomes over the last 1,000 years or so. That's all you need to do. Exactly. He gets it. Brian Mustard said, hey Vox, keep fighting in the rabbit hole. Great work. What book would you recommend to learn about what we know about DNA and junk DNA? I wouldn't know because I've never read one. Erica Anderson says, you couldn't possibly know the average rate since there are variables you have no knowledge of, like population size, access to food, etc. We do know the average rate. You don't even understand what an average rate is. We absolutely know what the average rate is. What we don't know is we don't know the fastest rate and we don't know the slowest rate. But the average rate is given. It's 44 mutations per generation. There's no way around that. That is the average rate. I mean, you understand, if you drive from New York to California and you do it in 24 hours, because we know how far it is from New York to California, we can tell you exactly what the average rate is. We don't know. We don't, what you're complaining about as well, you don't know what my maximum speed is, and you don't know how long I stopped at a gas station in Iowa. Well, you're right. We don't. But we do know what the average rate is, without question. Let's see. Why are all the bears attacking me and asking to ban me? First of all, you're off topic, you're wrong, and you are attacking somebody that they like. So don't do that. I'm not going to ban you now, but I would encourage you to stay on topic. I mean, just because I'm friends with Owen doesn't mean that you have to like him, but it's probably a good idea to refrain from attacking him when, you know, there's a couple hundred of his fans here. What's your opinion of giants and their finds being hidden by the Smithsonian for the evolution religion? I think that's probably true. I think that evolutionists have maintained this highly improbable theory for a long time and in a variety of nefarious ways. I think it's going to be very difficult for them once they realize that it can be falsified, and once they understand that it is almost certainly going to be falsified. Todd Everhart says, disprove sounds better than falsify. You've disproved tens. I don't think that I've disproved tens. I have merely shown a way that tens can be conclusively disproved. And I've also shown that the probabilities suggest that it probably will be disproved. But I haven't conclusively proved it, and I would be the first to admit it. Vox just demonstrated that any truck driver can do this math. Yeah, that. Luchador says, the condescension in this guy's voice at times is stunning. Well, it's because I'm smarter than just about everybody here, and that's fine, but it is mildly annoying when people who clearly don't even understand very, very simple stuff that you're explaining to them try to tell you that you're wrong, and then say silly things like, you can't know what the average is. You can't not know what the average is. Let's see. Lord Enel says, human footprints have been found preserved alongside giant mammals, including reptiles. Yeah, human footprints were found next to what looked like dinosaur footsteps. So a pair of scientists showed up and destroyed them. I mean, you know, there's so much fraud and shadiness that surrounds the whole thing. It's just ridiculous. Joao Matos de Costas asked, what economists most influence you in your thinking? I would say Joseph Schumpeter. He was a big influence on me, and he was the one who really made it clear how unreliable David Ricardo was, and kind of got me on my contrarian track. Take that, says Vox. Since we evidently share Neanderthal DNA, shouldn't chimp DNA be present at a tiny measurable level if evolution is correct? Well, they should be closer, obviously, to the... I mean, yes, to a certain extent. I mean, they will have a lot of chimp DNA. That doesn't mean that they will have any of the 20 million genes that chimps developed after the divergence. So to follow up the last super chat, do you know of any efforts to sequence many individuals' DNA? Yeah, they're doing it all the time. I mean, it's getting to the point now where you can actually pay to have your own genome mapped. I mean, it's probably possible to even look it up, how much it costs. Cost to map own genome. Okay. The cost to sequence a genome is about $1,000. According to Cohen analyst Doug Schenkel, genome sequencing and analysis cost around $1,400. So this is, I mean, believe it or not, this is conceivably an experiment that we could actually crowdfund and do ourselves. We could actually go ahead and see if we can get access to some older DNA and fire it up. So now, of course, we need some really big, fast computers to do the crunching of the results. But I think it's really exciting that in our lifetime, it's very, very possible for us to completely falsify the theory once and for all. I have no thoughts on Bigfoot or reptilians. None whatsoever. That's a good point. Try to explain algebra to an 8-year-old and have them act smarter than you are. Therefore, the condescending tone. Yeah. Let's see. I have no idea how many people are watching. Somebody said 1,000 people are on. That's pretty cool. Yeah, it'll be 2 shekels for the source of the footprint story. I read it 12 years ago. It's on the net. Just look around. You'll find it. Just dinosaur footprints destroyed. Do a search for that. You'll find it. Let's see. Why does it matter whether we evolve from apes or evolve from a chicken's nest? Well, because what we're looking at here is that if evolution is false and falsified, that means that we are genetically modified. We're genetically engineered. And that means we're not alone. It means that it doesn't mean that God exists. It doesn't mean that we are the children of, the sons of the Nephilim and so forth. It means that at some point in time, assuming that the time frames are correct, that there must have been some forms of genetic interventions. And so, anyhow, Joseph Sokolowski says, I feel the realm of scientific possibility has expanded now that I can imagine possibilities between the dead end trench of evolution. That's what's so interesting. That's what's cool about it. That's why I think it's kind of fun to think about this stuff. I'm not interested in trying to prove that God exists this way. God doesn't need me to defend him. Not in the slightest. I don't need any of this to hold on to my Christian faith. My Christian faith has nothing to do with science or history or any of that stuff. It has to do with the fact that I can see evil in the world around me every day. Cave Bear Chris said, did JF's theory reveal the way to experimentally disprove evolution via genome sequencing? Merci. I mean, well, not his theory per se, but the way that he tried to wave his hand and retreated to rhetoric and started talking about irrelevant mutation rates, it was very, very clear that they had nothing. It was very clear that this was a way to break down what their assumptions were. And so, and it's also interesting that nobody bothers to actually take this on. Caster28 says, this argument posits directed genetics. Do we actually cause our own advantageous mutations? Is that an evolved ability? No, that's not possible. The other thing that's interesting, let me point out the bottleneck issue. One retreat that they make is they claim, well, what if there's a catastrophe and then only the mutated individuals survive, and then a whole bunch of gene mutations just get fixed all at once. But see, the problem there, the reason it doesn't work at all is because of the concept of the minimum viable population. What they have found is that in a declining population, which of course one that gets subject to a bottleneck is, that means that the species usually goes extinct. Okay? That's why the environmentalists are so worried about so many of these species, because they are dropping well below the minimum viable population. Without human intervention and without humans rescuing them, they will go extinct. They are not evolving much faster and becoming much more fit because they are experiencing severe population bottlenecks. They are just going extinct. And so, now there might have been a couple of populations that survived bottlenecks. I believe that they said it's believed that the cheetah population got as low as 14 individuals. Maybe that happened. Maybe that worked. But in general, any population that is affected by a catastrophe and has its population decline, first of all, its mutations tend to become more deleterious. It doesn't tend to enhance their fitness, and the species tends to go extinct. So, at no point, Baron von Metzenstern gets it. If evolution were true, we should have expected super pandas 20 years ago. Exactly. But it's not happening. And so, in fact, pandas appear to be becoming less and less fit. They can't even get them to have sex. And so, anyhow, I think it's an interesting topic. I think it's an interesting concept. Vox, would it startle you to learn that higher IQ people were big fans? Not particularly. I mean, there's a lot of very high IQ people that have been hanging out around VP for a while. I am very, very far from the smartest person there. Bourbon Bear says, we had giant sloths, wolves, bears, and beavers. I find it weirdly disgusting that science would tell us it's impossible for giant humans to exist. Yeah, that is crazy, but it doesn't fit their narrative, so of course they have to deny it. Thanks for what you do, Vox. Thanks for your support, Bourbon Bear. Always good to see the bears here. I blame panda porn. Clearly that's the problem. And I do agree with Wolfman. We need to make sloths giant again. Although sloths kind of freak me out. Just the way they always look like they're doing like Tai Chi or something. Geneticists say humans were bottlenecked down to something like 10,000 breeding pairs. Um, yeah, I mean, it's all just literally science fiction. If we know the total number of fixed mutation, what difference does it make if there was a bottleneck event? Well, they postulate several of them in order to explain why so many fixed mutations have happened. Giant otters. Giant otters would be terrifying because giant otters are awesome. I mean, otters are awesome. I love otters, but they do, you know. We were actually kind of looking at getting. I was interested in getting an otter, and then I read a person who owned an otter saying that getting an otter is great if you have anything in your house that isn't broken, because they will break literally everything. So anyhow, well, thanks for tuning in. I hope you found this interesting. If you've got a point of criticism, feel free to email it to me. I'm always happy to look at substantive criticism. One of the reasons why somebody said, why are you so dismissive of JF? Well, it's because I was expecting substantive criticism from him, and instead, I got, I wop the floor with you, millions and billions and all of these seeds, and just total rhetorical nonsense. Um, that's not what I approve of. That's not what I respect. And so, anyhow, what super chat did I miss? Let me see here. I must have missed one. You'll have to forgive me, but I'm on the system that, frankly, oh, I see. Is it the mustache evolved from chest hair after men started wearing animal skins? It had to migrate north to be seen. Color me dubious. Promise us more techno next time. Oh, we'll have some music in the future. Let's see. Oh, Muffhead said, would you consider doing 2-hour streams? No. I like to keep it to an hour. I've got way too much to do, with the books and the comics and all this other stuff. So, anyhow, well, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. If I missed a super chat, I will be sure to cover it on the next one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I would encourage you to subscribe. And also, in case you're interested in my fiction, we have A Throne of Bones out in audiobook, and you can find the link below. Have a good evening. This is the Darkstream. I'm Vox Day.